So my name is Richard Moorhead. I'm a professor here at UCL and I teach legal services, commerce, ethics and innovation with a visiting professor, Richard Susskind. A little bit more about him in a minute. What's legal services, commerce and ethics and innovation about? Well, it's about the future of law firms and legal practice, the future of your careers if you're planning to be lawyers, or the future of the legal world. In particular, we look at the three themes. The first is the business of law and law firms, how they're set up as businesses, how that drives what they do. The second is the future of law, how that might change, how that might develop in terms of its delivery and what impact that might have on clients and on lawyers providing those services. And the third is the ethics of that change, how the business of law and innovation in law might pose ethical challenges both for lawyers and for others involved in the justice system. So let's talk in a little bit more detail about some of those ideas, give you some examples. So the first thing we talk about is legal service markets and law firms. The kinds of questions that we look at are the rise of the big law firm. It's been dramatically successful. Why is that? What drives that? And also now the predicted fall of big law. Is that happening really? Should we be worried about it? The second issue, which kind of derives from that, is, are law firms functional as businesses, and what does that mean for lawyers working within them and for clients and society? And related to that point is the idea of, well, are they ethical organisations? What might make them more or less ethical? Here we give you a slide just to, if those of you who think that big law firms are kind of indestructible, a slide of what's going on in the States, and we see that actually the number of legal services jobs in the States in private practice seems to be declining against other indicators, government jobs in this particular slide. Even in the UK, where we look at big law firms, we start to see a downward trend in profitability or growth in profits and a slowing of the trend in relation to revenue, which might suggest that there are problems in big law firms and that might predate the financial crash. Related to that is the growth of jobs outside of private law firms. So here is a graph from some of Bill Henderson's work suggesting that the growth of non-conventional legal careers may be dramatic in the United States, and I would suggest here also. Related to that too is the growth of in-house legal positions, lawyers not working in law firms but working within often large corporations or the government legal services and the like. And that the growing importance of that sector, both economically in size terms, but also in terms of the control and influence they exercise as clients over private practice law firms, that seems to be a major driver of change in the legal services sector. That may give rise to particular ethical and other problems. A second issue related to changes in legal services market delivery are what are sometimes called alternative business structures. We spend a little bit of time looking at the dramatic potentially changes in the UK legal services market. On this slide we see a list of new entrants into the market. Some of those you will recognise as, for instance, legal publishers getting increasingly interested in the delivery of certain types of legal services. We see a bank and supermarket, the Co-op, getting involved in legal services, insurance companies and innovative new outfits like Riverview Law, redesigning the way that commercial legal services are provided. We also see some failures. So Stobart's Barristers was an example of the haulage company, lorry drivers if you like, trying to run legal services and actually having to fail. So it's a time of dramatic flux. Where is that coming from? It's coming from the Legal Services Act, a dramatic deregulation, some would say, or liberalisation of the legal services market, a kind of natural experiment with legal services in England and Wales, which even President Obama has commented on. The world is genuinely watching what's going on here, and in this course we get the opportunity to scrutinise developments and changes here, to think of the broader implications for legal careers, for legal services, for clients and for justice. A second theme is to look at quality and cost, and here we get into some of the more nitty-gritty theory and research around lawyers. What is it that makes law so expensive? Is it simply that lawyers seem to be paid quite high salaries? Are indeed lawyers paid well? How does the way lawyers charge and how much they charge influence their ethics and quality? Does it influence that kind of thing? And just to give you a small flavour of the kind of more unusual literature we might look at, here is an experiment about tomatoes. It was an experiment where two baskets of tomatoes were placed outside a shop. One was priced at, let's say, £1 a kilo. Another was priced at £2 a kilo. Which tomatoes were the most popular? This is an experiment about the Veblen effect, in fact. what drives consumer choices. The assumption might be that the £2 a kilo tomatoes are more expensive, when in actual fact, under the experiment, the tomatoes were exactly the same. It's strange, therefore, that people might be inclined to choose more expensive tomatoes when they can pick up the tomatoes and look at them to see if they're actually the same. Do these kind of Veblen effects, these drivers which associate quality with price, impact on legal services? Well, that seems quite likely if we think of legal services as something where we can't visibly inspect the quality. Consumers, even sophisticated commercial consumers, may struggle to understand what the quality of legal services really is. That might be one of the things that drives up cost. That might be one of the things that makes choice based on quality actually rather difficult. So against that background, we look at things like what kind of quality should lawyers provide? Should they provide excellence or mere competence? There are strong arguments for saying lawyers should be actually less than excellent on occasions. But also we look at research which suggests that too often lawyers are perhaps less than competent. Let me move on to the second theme. Are lawyers more ethical than business people? Lawyers as professionals often claim to be more ethical than mere business. Well, here again, just to give you a little flavour of some of the kinds of literature we look at some of the psychological literature. So imagine an experiment where I prime half of you to think of yourselves as professionals and another half of you to think of yourselves as ordinary employees, and then I give you a little test of your ethicality. There is a sweetie jar. In that jar there are about 2,000 sweets. I tell you roughly how many sweets there are, and you're then asked to advise somebody else about the number of those sweets, but you're given an incentive to exaggerate the number. Will you exaggerate that number? Well, this experiment was actually done by a researcher called Miriam Kucharki, and she found those who were primed to think as professionals were more likely to lie than those who were primed to think of themselves as mere employees. A kind of counterintuitive finding if we regard professionals as more inclined to be ethical. The way you paid might really make a difference. So we look at those kinds of issues, what the drivers might be behind ethicality, why the claims of lawyers to be ethical might be weaker. The final example I give is we'll talk a little bit about theory and practice of innovation. This, as I say, is a major element of the course. We get practitioners in from outside to talk to you about the kinds of things we do. We talk about why might legal services be right for revolution, what are the pros and cons of innovation in legal services, how might the practice of law and legal careers be transformed. We look at things like how systems can improve things. Now, lawyers are very much like to rely on their own judgment. Every case is unique and different. But if systems can be applied to ensure that planes don't crash, or that with engineers that buildings don't fall down, or with venture capitalists that they don't make bad investments, or even doctors, very simple checklists have been used to dramatically reduce death rates in operations, perhaps systems can help lawyers. And here is the point at which Richard Susskind comes into the course. Richard is perhaps the world leader in terms of thinking about the future of lawyering and lawyers. He's written many books, here's one on the slide, about the future of legal services delivery. And Richard takes a number of classes. You get a detailed chance to engage with his ideas and his thoughts. He looks at things like this, the 5 stages of legal services evolution. You get to think about how that might transform certain types of lawyers' work, which kind of lawyers' work will remain, if you like, the most financially remunerative, the one that requires the greatest expertise, which can be standardized, sold online in an app or via a website or the like. And that leads us into some very interesting territory. Can computers really do legal jobs better than lawyers? If we have a computer helping diagnose cancer, can computers judge cases? Well, we're starting to see the beginnings of a movement towards computers being able to do that kind of thing. What do we think about that as lawyers? Do we feel threatened by that, or do we see that as an opportunity to develop new and exciting ways of delivering legal services? Is it an opportunity to help more people get access to justice? And if you think this is pie in the sky, we'll look at some real concrete examples. So here is one in the Netherlands. It is now possible to deal with your divorce entirely online, including getting mediation, arbitration, and negotiation of settlements. It still involves real people, but it minimises the time and expense of lawyers or judges to try and deliver an affordable set of services to people who are willing to divorce in this particular way. Okay, so a little bit about the structuring of the course, how it's taught and how it's assessed. So it's taught by leading professors in the field, but also we get in business experts and professionals practicing at the cutting edge, delivering innovation, thinking about innovation. So it's an opportunity for you to get, if you like, the academic perspective and the practical perspective on the future of legal practice. In terms of assessment, this is designed to try and maximise your engagement with the course, to encourage you to think critically about the areas that interest you, and therefore the assessment process is there is no exam. There are 3 1,000-word portfolio pieces, and then there is a 3,000-word essay where you can take a topic of your choice and develop it in detail, think about it in detail, following your interests, consistent with the kinds of things that we've explored in class. Okay, finally, just a few by way of conclusion. I think this is a really exciting course. We will take you through some of the material which shows that already a machine-based system, an algorithm with only 6 variables, can predict the outcome of US Supreme Court decisions, for instance, better than the experts. Here's some of the data from that study. There are systems that help lawyers negotiate clinical negligence cases. This is from a US company again, that helps you decide how low or how high to pitch your offer in a settlement negotiation. It's a kind of cyborg approach to legal practice. And we have the kind of interesting, contestable, worrying phenomenon of robot judges. Could we have computers deciding cases? Actually, we already do, in a way. eBay is one of those systems, but there may be more sophisticated systems down the track with artificial intelligence. Would that make the system less human or more accessible? Would it be politically unacceptable? Why might it be politically unacceptable? Who decides whether the robot judges are doing a good enough job? What does that leave left for the lawyers to do? All very exciting, interesting, somewhat scary sometimes questions. Those are ultimately the kinds of themes that drive the course. I hope you'll find it interesting. I hope to see you in the autumn.